At first, no one thought much about Karen becoming HOA president. The election had been quiet, like most HOA elections were. A few ballots, a short announcement email, and that was it. Life in the neighborhood continued as usual. Trimmed lawns, quiet streets, and the occasional HOA reminder about trash pickup or landscaping standards. But within a few weeks, residents began noticing a subtle shift. The HOA meetings became shorter. Questions were answered quickly and moved along. Financial reports were summarized instead of shared in detail. Karen always spoke confidently, often reminding everyone that the board was working hard to maintain community standards. Most people accepted that explanation until someone asked a simple question. During one meeting, a homeowner raised their hand and asked if residents could review the detailed HOA budget. It wasn't a confrontational request, just curiosity about how the monthly dues were being spent. Karen smiled politely and said the board already handled the financial oversight. The meeting moved on. 3 days later, the homeowner received their first violation notice. According to the letter, their trash bins had been left visible from the street longer than permitted hours. The fine wasn't huge, but it felt strange. The bins had been out for less than an hour. At first, it looked like coincidence, but then another homeowner asked a question at the next meeting about landscaping contracts, and the same thing happened, a violation letter. Soon, people started noticing something uncomfortable. Asking questions during HOA meetings seemed to trigger inspections, and Karen appeared to be the one holding the clipboard. At first, people dismissed the violations as bad luck. HOA rules could be strict sometimes. Trash bins, lawn height, driveway stains, those things happened. Most residents paid the small fines and moved on with their lives. Trouble with the HOA, but the pattern slowly became impossible to ignore. The homeowner who asked about the budget received 3 violation notices in 2 weeks. First, it was the trash bin rule. Then, it was a complaint about their driveway needing pressure washing. Then, the HOA cited a decorative lighting violation for a small string of patio lights. Another neighbor asked a question during the next meeting about landscaping costs. 2 days later, they received a letter warning them that their lawn edging was inconsistent with neighborhood standards. The letters were always signed by Karen. The same thing happened again the following month. A resident asked why HOA dues had increased. That week, Karen's car began appearing on their street every morning. Neighbors began noticing her routine: a slow drive through the neighborhood, a clipboard resting on the passenger seat. Sometimes she stopped in front of certain houses and took photos with her phone. And strangely enough, those houses soon received violation letters. Soon, the conversations started happening quietly between neighbors, at mailboxes, during evening walks. The same story kept repeating. Ask a question at a meeting, receive a violation notice a few days later. Karen probably believed the strategy would work. Most people didn't want to fight their HOA, but what she didn't realize was that the residents had started comparing their letters, and the pattern was becoming very clear. By the third month, the violations were no longer random. Neighbors gathered in a driveway after noticing that 3 different houses on the same street had received notices that week. Each homeowner brought their letters. Some had warnings about trash bins. Others were fined for lawn edges, driveway stains, or decorative inconsistencies. But the dates told a different story. Every violation happened shortly after a homeowner asked a question at an HOA meeting. That discovery changed everything. Residents started documenting every letter. They compared photos, dates, and even Karen's inspection times. One neighbor mentioned seeing Karen's car parked on the street early in the morning several times a week, always near the same homes. Soon a small group began keeping track of everything: every violation notice, every meeting question, and every inspection. Within a few weeks, the timeline was impossible to ignore. 5 homeowners had asked questions during meetings. Those same 5 homeowners had received the majority of violation fines. Meanwhile, several houses with obvious rule violations had never received a notice at all. It wasn't just strict enforcement. It looked like selective enforcement. The more residents compared their records, the more uncomfortable the truth became. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was targeting the people who challenged her decisions. By the time the next HOA meeting was announced, the residents weren't planning to sit quietly this time. They were bringing their evidence, and Karen had no idea what was waiting for her. The next HOA meeting was nothing like the previous ones. Usually only a handful of residents attended, but that evening, nearly every chair in the clubhouse was filled. Some people stood along the walls holding folders and printed letters. The atmosphere felt heavy with quiet tension. Karen walked in confidently, carrying her usual binder and clipboard. She clearly expected another routine meeting where she would run through the agenda and close the session quickly. But the room was different. When the floor opened for questions, one homeowner stood up and placed several violation letters on the table in front of the board. Another followed with printed photos showing houses with the same violations that had never received notices. Soon, a small stack of documents formed on the table. Then, someone projected a timeline onto the wall. The pattern was obvious. Every homeowner who had asked a question at a meeting had later received multiple violation fines. Meanwhile, other homes with the same issues were never cited at all. The room went silent. One board member slowly flipped through the evidence. Another compared it to the HOA rulebook sitting beside them. When they asked Karen to explain the difference in enforcement, her confident tone disappeared. By the end of the meeting, the board voted to suspend her authority while a full review of enforcement practices took place. Karen didn't argue, because the strategy she thought would keep people quiet had done the opposite. It brought the entire neighborhood together. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever seen someone in leadership punish people for asking questions? Share your experience in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people learn how to challenge unfair systems.